It's pure ideology. Pure ideology.
Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome to Black Flag. You may have noticed that we're doing something different today. In this new series, we are going to look at certain social, cultural, and political artifacts that are emblematic of capitalist ideology. It can be a piece of news, an opinion column, an ad, movies, TV shows, music, or anything else that is so deeply imbued with capitalist ideology, it makes one go,
It's pure ideology.
by themselves, fragmented and subtly peppered through our lives, these nuggets of ideology may seem inconsequential, but if we tug at them, the veil before our eyes begins to unravel. The capitalist edifice begins to crumble and the hegemonic... You know what? F it. This is really just about mocking assholes and getting mad at things, to be honest. So, let's get on with it. So in the first episode today, I want to give a shout out to my man Udit Misra, who's the resident economics nerd at the Indian Express, for writing this absolutely glorious piece of pure ideology titled "Why Government Mandated Price Controls Are a Tricky Business Even for Essential Medicines" on July the 7th. So straight off, you know this is going to be good, because I don't know if you've noticed, there is an entire class of authors and explainers like this one, whose sole purpose is to basically say that, hey, you think that this particular thing is going to help the poor? Well, here's why you're wrong, dummy. Learn some basic. Anyway, let's jump right into the text. It goes, "Dear readers, do you ever wonder why doesn't the government simply cap the prices of certain goods, say essential medicines, petrol and diesel, and services, say airline tickets in the economy, and fix the floor for others, say minimum wages, house rents?" Yes, so then, go on, I have wondered that. Surely those airlines charging exorbitant prices during the Chennai floods a few years ago need to be roped in, right? Yeah. Similarly, wouldn't it be better if the government could just fix the price of petrol and diesel? And wouldn't we bring down poverty by raising minimum wages? And hasn't it been prudent that India's drug regulator brought an increasing number of drugs under price control over the years? He then goes on to say that, contrary to these common sense solutions, the drug regulator has actually increased the cost of the drug heparin, which is a blood thinner by the way, by 50%, and drug companies are lobbying to increase the prices of other essential medicines. At this point, he raises the pertinent question. You might justifiably ask, why is the government raising prices smack in the middle of a health crisis? Isn't this the time when people need cheap medication the most? Yeah, what the f is up with that? He tells us that the price of heparin has been increased because there is a scarcity of inputs, which leads to higher costs of manufacturing the drug and hence higher prices. This is no rocket science, he tells us. And this is when he throws up some basic economics 101 at the reader to show them their place for being stupid dummies and believing all that stuff about making essential affordable. That then brings us to the question, why cap prices in the first place? That's because far too often policymakers across the world believe that capping prices will ensure supply for all. But this notion defies the basic laws of economics. As a general rule, capping prices tends to suppress supply, increase demand, and thus create shortages. Seems to me there's some kind of friction between the basic laws of economics and the welfare of people who cannot afford life-saving drugs. But do go on and tell me why we should give pharma companies more money. Now, many of you might say, but health is not like any other commodity such as a car or petrol. Why shouldn't medicines prices be capped? The process of discovering cures and making medicines follows the same laws of economics and markets that making a new car design or a new aircraft engine or creating a new type of biscuit does. If anything, the chances of failure in the pharma industry could be higher and the process far more demanding in terms of monetary and time investment required to be successful. So capping prices might provide immediate relief, but it also has an adverse impact. Okay, so this is where the ideology gets flowing really good. Forget about the fact that a lot of drug research the world over is publicly funded and then just handed over to the private sector to profit. Forget about the fact that US pharma companies are able to charge an arm and a leg for drugs like insulin, which doesn't have a patent, and the research that led to its discovery happened in the 1920s. Just because they can do that, okay. Forget about the fact that a huge chunk of pharma companies' expenditure is on marketing, and a big part of that is bribing doctors to overprescribe medication. Forget all of that. Even if the argument Mishra is making is 100% correct, it still doesn't tackle or even acknowledge the tension between the market mechanism and welfare of the poor. Okay, we don't cap prices so pharma companies can innovate and charge whatever they want. Great. Absent any intervention, you will have decreased demand, so there won't be any shortages, but a bunch of people who needed those drugs are dead. Yay! To be fair to Udit, he's not suggesting we don't intervene. His solution is even more boneheaded, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, let me put a line under this drug price thing. This kind of an argument betrays such a lack of imagination, it is truly breathtaking. You have a perfect illustration of the market mechanism failing, and your response isn't, I guess some aspects of the economy shouldn't really be governed by markets because it leads to such unjust outcomes as people who cannot afford life-saving drugs dying. Healthcare really shouldn't be something you should have to trade on the market. No, you don't think that. We cannot have that as a society. The logic of the market must permeate every sphere of our life. We have no choice but to submit because we can't really change anything. That way madness lies. And then there's this little nugget. If you double the minimum wages in the country today, you may benefit some who already hold jobs, but you will destroy the chances of many more who would not be employed in the future because it is just too costly to pay the minimum wages. In effect, by raising minimum wages in excess of productivity, the policymakers may impoverish the bulk of workers. Again, forget about the fact that there's a lot of studies out there pointing out how raising the minimum wage doesn't adversely harm employment in the long run, and notice how he frames this, raising minimum wages in excess of productivity. In fact, what has happened the world over and even in India is that productivity has gone through the roof whereas wages have stagnated or declined. So it's really, really poorly framed. But again, forget all of that. Even if the argument that he's making is correct, that if you raise the minimum wage, you lose a lot of employment, shouldn't this create some sort of a doubt in your head about the infallibility of market logic? People like Udit, market worshippers can only see two alternatives which the market is providing. Either all workers live miserable lives at barely subsistent wages, or some of them get to be slightly better off and the others can, starve. If you're a normal human being with a functioning head and a heart, that should give you some pause about the logic of the market. But no, knowing that you cannot mess with the forces of the market and the prerogatives of capital, that's how you land a job in the media. But anyway, like I said, Udit is not really in favor of the government not intervening at all. He does want some intervention. He's not a libertarian, I think. No, he has a solution for ensuring pharma companies are happy and drugs are affordable as well, which is, instead of capping prices, governments should realize that high prices show a demand-supply mismatch. A crucial reason why private hospitals are able to charge exorbitant prices for drugs, tests or beds is that there is an adequate public healthcare provisioning. Oh, thanks for telling us, nobody knew that. If governments invested in public healthcare and bought the essential medicines in bulk, they would have a better chance of making healthcare affordable without distorting the market. Oh, great, that's actually a good idea. The thing is that it would require a lot of expenditure by the government, and I don't know, isn't there a thing that poses serious structural constraints on government spending with its obsession for containing the fiscal deficit and enabling market mechanisms to take their course? His great idea, his great suggestion to provide cheap essentials and not distort markets is directly opposed to the central pillars of his own neoliberal ideology, which is something that doesn't even register in his head. Come on, man. Well, this is kind of embarrassing. You should at least know your own ideology. It's not rocket science.